So we're in an era when conspiracy theories are rampant, when people are much more paranoid than normal, especially in the United States of America amid a raging culture war. One could call it Phase 3 of the American Civil War. Just look at a map. Last time I spoke about 5 things to bear in mind when you find yourself facing a conspiracy fetishist. Now let's bear in mind, again, there have been conspiracies throughout human history. Some of them succeeded at either pickpocketing the pockets of the masses, or occasionally diverting the destiny of nations. So not every conspiracy theory is going to be wrong. And even if it's crackpotty being delivered by a lapel-grabbing, silly person, there may be a grain of truth to it. So keeping open mind is not a bad thing. Last time I discussed a number of traits that you should look for that help to distinguish an interesting, unusual hypothesis from a ditzo-paranoid movie plot. I'm going to continue with this list this time, but they're all going to be available, posted online as well. Number 6 is look for the mundane. Look for things that would betray the plot that have to do with just people being people. Don't expect your conspirators to be uber beings. An example is this World Trade Center spare change thing that has been popular on the far left. Very silly scenario. But it's based upon the notion that hundreds of skilled professional members of the protector caste, cops, FBI agents, military officers, swarmed over the World Trade Center towers for months, planting explosives. We'll get into the question of why. We mentioned last time the whole notion of competence. If hundreds of our best people were that competent to do that kind of tasks so secretly and so perfectly, wouldn't we have better things for them to do? A very related aspect is the reliance on sheer luck. In the spare change World Trade Center towers conspiracy notion, you were asking hundreds of men and women who were fathers, brothers, sisters, parents of Americans to betray their oaths, to betray their country for vague reasons, and all of it reliant on the luck that no outsider was going to catch on. And the way an outsider, a security guard, found a piece of tape on a door during the Watergate break-in. Reliance on luck also happens on the favorite conspiracy theory on the right, birthers. Not only do they never come up with a scenario or an explanation or a set of dates for why Obama's mother and father would have ever gone to Kenya, or that they ever were in Kenya, but their theory has to rely upon the luck that they never come up with a critical mass of people who say, I saw them at this particular date, at this particular time. They believe that a conspiracy was there to fake that Obama was in Hawaii, and the conspirators would be relying on the luck that nobody who knew them while they lived in Kenya would ever raise his hand and say, but they were here. The conspiracy theory is totally reliant on luck in both directions. Now here's one that's a little hard to follow, but bear with me. Most conspiracy theories focus on a garish event. Kennedy is assassinated. The World Trade Centers fall. And then there is a weaving of complicated notions about how the event could have been perpetrated and what the motivation would have been. Oliver Stone created this incredibly ornate notion about the Kennedy assassination. But if you actually work out what the assassins were trying to do, they wanted to kill Kennedy because he was thinking of sort of pondering, calling some meetings to discuss the possibility of changing our policy in Vietnam. That's what it boils down to. You would take all that risk and kill the President of the United States over that? And it didn't even work because, of course, the net result was Vietnam torched our country. Similarly, another example is to explain the garish event of our invasion of Iraq by saying we were going after the oil. Well, if that was the motive, it did not succeed for 6 years after invading Iraq. We got no oil. No oil flowed out of Iraq. And even now, our contracts aren't particularly better than European contracts. An alternative paranoia was that we invaded Iraq in order to remove Iraqi oil from the world market and help our other friends. That's a better theory. I can always come up with a better paranoid theory than most of these conspiracy theories. Count on it. The point is that you have this happening time and time and time again. Time and time again. You have a situation in which the focus is on the garish event and far too little detail or attention is spent on what happened. Did it work? If they're so competent they could do that garish event, why didn't the plan work? But all of this comes toward my two last recommendations when dealing with conspiracy theories. Number 9 is burden of proof. Honestly, who has the burden of proof? 99% of scientists who have studied atmospheric studies, who have studied atmospheres and weather and climate on 12 planets, who understand Bernoulli's theorem much better than the conspirator theory guys do, who have developed the same computer programs to advance our weather prediction capabilities from the joke that the 6-hour forecast was when I was a kid to 6-day forecasts that you rely on for your vacations. Miraculous, fantastic stuff by skilled, competent people who are also very competitive with each other and would never go into a cabal together. So what's more likely? That 99% of them are either clueless fools or conspirators when they say we should be worried about something, or the possibility that maybe those who are criticizing them should have a little humility, recognize that they bear a burden of proof, and ask questions. Ask questions instead of making grand declarations. That's just one example. I could give plenty citing on the other direction. If you have a conspiracy theory, fine. If you have an unusual hypothesis, fine. If you believe you know how to do anti-gravity and all the physicists in the world are wrong, fine. But you bear a burden of proof. Approach it with humility and with a sense of humor. Some self-effacing humor. I got to figure out what's wrong, because I can't see what's wrong with my theory. And I think I see a lot wrong with the standard theory. It must be me, but I want some answers. That is the behavior of a mature person who understands the burden of proof. Not, you're all a bunch of conspiratorial fools. You people who have the expertise and the knowledge. My final suggestion is simple. Make bets, wagers. If you are facing a person with an unusual hypothesis, actually a lapel-grabbing conspiracy theory, and they are so sure of themselves, put money on it. Parse it out carefully, parse out your bet carefully, but make them do what scientists do, and that is offer a falsifiable hypothesis. That means things that would be true if their theory is true, and if those things prove false, then their theory is wrong, or at least downgraded. If they're so sure that they're willing to put their own country into culture war, debilitating, nasty, harming our ability to pragmatically negotiate with each other, if they're willing to do that, if they're so sure they're willing to do that, then they should be willing to put money on it. After all, if they're sure, your money is as good as theirs. Just find a neutral third party to hold it. Make them bet. Get odds from them because they're so sure. A funny thing will happen. They'll back off.